First, they lost control of the House and Senate, then the White House, and now Republicans are looking to bounce back in a big way in next year's midterm election. History says that can happen with the party out of power. With a little more than a year to go, a strategy of attack is beginning to emerge, and the main target seems to be the Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And the plan, as we're seeing it from Republicans, linked Democrats up for re-election to some of Nancy Pelosi's less popular policies. It's worth noting Republicans have tried this before, first in 2006, before she was the House Speaker, and then in 2008. Each time, the plan really didn't have too much of an effect, according to insiders. But last week, the GOP offensive began once again. So will the third time be the charm, or is this plan the wrong plan? With us now to debate the strategy, Republican pollster and veteran GOP consultant Chris Wilson is with us, and Brian Donahue, partner at the Republican political consulting firm Jamestown Associates. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, I think all you have to do is look back to the last couple of years and see how successful the Democrats were in trying Republicans, well-known, even well-liked Republicans, to George W. Bush, and it was fairly effective as a campaign strategy. The reason this wasn't successful the last 4 years for Republicans, Pelosi wasn't well-known. She wasn't all that unpopular. But you look at what's happened to her numbers now. Her unfavorables exceed her favorables by 16 points. She's a 48-32. And I think we're now at a point to where Nancy Pelosi is seen as a liberal California Democrat. She motivates the base. She scares swing voters. And I think you're going to see it have a different impact than we may have the last couple of years.
Brian Donahue, where do you disagree?
Well, I disagree. I mean, this really comes down to Washington policies, not Nancy Pelosi's personality. People care about whether they're going to have a job in a few months. They care about their retirement. They care about health care. And those issues are going to be important, and Republicans are on the right side of these issues, as our numbers are showing. So I disagree and don't think that making this about one person and one person's personality is the right tact here.
But Brian, you know, at one point or another, Democrats are going to get mad, or Republicans are going to get mad, and some of the Republicans who are angry right now seem to like to target Nancy Pelosi. I mean, how many times have you heard, would you look at Nancy Pelosi now? Why wouldn't it work?
Well, sure. I mean, there is a place for it. I think for fundraising, I think for putting a face on the liberal attack machine. But I think for overall, average Americans really care about issues that hit them emotionally, issues that hit them in the heart and in the pocketbook. And that really comes down to what's going on in Washington and the anti-Washington sentiment, not one personality, Nancy Pelosi.
Chris, would one personality, if you're the Democrats, wouldn't it be easier to defend one personality, or to, if you wish, throw one personality under the proverbial bus, than it would be to talk about all the issues which Brian says the Republicans ought to be talking about?
Well, I think Brian could be right. Well, at the same time, I would still say that, yes, this is the right way to go, because let me just say, this is not a panacea. It doesn't work in exchange of a campaign. You still have to have a campaign. You still have to talk about issues. But the fact is Nancy Pelosi has reached a level of unpopularity we haven't seen since Newt Gingrich. And Newt Gingrich wasn't even this unpopular. It's important to recognize. And the Democrats were able to successfully make him an issue in 1998, and where by all historical standards, Republicans should have picked up seats in an off-year Democrat presidential year election. We lost 5 seats in the House. And I think because of that, and because Republicans waited so long to understand this and to defend Gingrich, we were unsuccessful in 98 in picking up seats as we should have. And so because of that, I really hope the Democrats do leave her in power, and I hope they go to try bad for her, because they're not going to change her numbers around. She is a liberal. She is on the wrong side of issues, and she scares people. And because of that, it'll be a successful issue for Republicans in 2010.
Brian, do you disagree with any of the specifics of Chris's argument there?
Well, I think Chris makes a good point that was effective in using Newt Gingrich and other people to try and tie Republicans to. But we really got to understand the dynamics of this year. The health care debate just brought out deep passions in Americans. The issue of cap and trade in parts of this country are so important. And we're about to talk about, you know, what's going on in Afghanistan, and that's really going to be a hot issue as well. This affects Americans. This is where they get emotional about. Nancy Pelosi is something that gets Republicans and people on the right pretty hot under the collar. But when we're talking about appealing as a party across the party lines and transcending ideology, it really comes down to where do we stand on the core issues and how they're getting it wrong in Washington. The Washington leadership's getting it wrong. We need to make some changes.
Brian Donahue in Washington, Chris Wilson in Oklahoma City, out of time. Thank you both for being. I'm just done. I'm out of time. I hear you both. We'll report. Let them decide. We'd love to hear from you. Studio B at foxnews.com. All right.